This is ironically the first tier list I'm doing on YouTube using Tier Maker. So essentially, I'll be ranking the characters based on how well written I think they are, and also how well developed they are. I'll try and be as objective as possible, but obviously this is somewhat subjective depending on how you measure how well written a character is, obviously. But as you know, I'm not biased. I've actually read the Attack on Titan character profiles, so I think I do have a good idea of how well written the characters are. More so than other YouTubers, I think. But yeah, this is just a fun video. I won't be going balls deep into each character or anything, and how appealing they are might actually be a factor. So these aren't going to be concrete, I'll change them as they go. Let's start off with John. I think John's pretty interesting. He's one of my favorite characters for sure. I'm gonna put him at B tier. Only because I think he can make the higher tiers, right? It's just that he hasn't had a lot of development. I think there's definitely interesting themes he brings up, right? But yeah, he's a pretty Chad character, I think. But he's not somebody who I'd say has really good writing or anything. He does show a lot of parallels to other characters, but I think that's more of a writing technique generally rather than him being written well. Next, let's pick Rodriguez. I think he's kind of trash. He's really annoying, and he's kind of he's a bit of a villain, I suppose. He was trying to turn Historia into a Titan, and he only really cared about himself. I suppose that makes him somewhat interesting. I mean, just because a character is evil or they're really dislikable doesn't mean they're bad inherently. I thought he's quite interesting, and yeah, I'm just gonna put him at a C tier for now, but he might move into D tier. I'm not too sure yet. I mean, a lot of people hate this guy, but yeah, I hate him as well, don't get me wrong. But it's just that I think he's quite an interesting character, and he helps, he's a support character. Imagine if this is a game, right? He gives, characters Historia, development and stuff, so that's probably why he's here. Next is Gabby. I think, a lot of people would rank her lowly, because, they hate her, since she literally killed Sasha, one of the best characters for sure. But I think she's kind of interesting. She's a parallel to Eren. She has a really similar scene to Eren when she looks in the mirror. She does care about Falco, I think. And when she looks in the mirror, she talks about getting him back and fighting for him, which might be quite an interesting, relevant theme in Attack on Titan, right? Fighting for somebody. So I don't know where to put her. I'm gonna put her A tier, but she could move into B tier. I know a lot of people hate her just because she killed Sasha, but that doesn't make her a badly written character. She's obviously quite relevant to the show. Next, I'm gonna pick this dude. I don't even know who he is. I'm gonna be completely honest. Does anybody remember this dude? Maybe it's just me being stupid. I really cannot remember this guy. Is he even relevant? I imagine he's super relevant, and I just can't remember who he is. But I genuinely can't remember who this guy is. So I'm just gonna put him in unknown, because I actually don't know who he is. Next is Hitch. I think Hitch is a really interesting character too. I'm gonna say everybody's interesting. This is hilarious. Hitch is actually a really cool character. I mean, she obviously changed a lot from seasons 3 to 4, but character-wise, I don't think a lot changed. I mean, her physical appearance changed, but that's about it. Apparently, Isayama revealed that she had feelings for Annie or something, and I don't know if that makes her more complex. I don't think it does, but for now, I'm gonna leave her in high C tier. Next character, Willy. I'm gonna put him in D tier just because, Willy, D. Yeah, funny name, Willy. In complete seriousness, Willy is he's obviously quite an important character. The whole declaration of war, but that's about it. If you take out the declaration of war stuff, he's not that well written. He's more of a plot point, if that makes sense, but being a plot point might make you relevant. So I want to put him C tier, but that's literally all he did. He literally had one scene. I'm only gonna put him D tier because he's hardly done anything, but he had one of the most important scenes in the entire series. The next character we're going to talk about is the Asian lady. The one the one that kind of represents Hirazu. I think she's a horrible person, if I'm being honest, right? We don't know if she actually cares about Mikasa. She claims she does, right? But it's also hinted that she's a really corporate person, and the only reason they're trying to make an alliance with Paradise Island is for financial reasons. They're trying to make connections with other countries and gain money out of war, essentially. Which does actually make her quite interesting, I suppose. But I dislike her as a person, I suppose. Once again, I think she's another D rank character, and she just seems like a character who belongs in D tier, if I'm being honest. This dude here, Commander Shadis. I think he's a dude who's in love with Eren's mum, but he couldn't get laid or anything, so he kind of just settled for being a virgin. But jokes aside, he looks like a scary dude actually, now I think about it. But he's an interesting character because isn't he the one who brought the whole idea of predeterminism? He said that some people are born special, but he wasn't one of them. he's the one who kind of brought that theme. And he didn't want Eren to succeed. Partly probably because he didn't want him to get hurt, but he knew Eren was special deep down. He's definitely like important because like I know later on, like obviously spoiler alert, I'm gonna mention stuff that happens in the final season in the manga, but he suicide bombs himself alongside Magath. So the two commanders killed themselves. And they kind of have this brief discussion about setting an example for the future, and both these commanders agree that what they were ultimately doing, like fighting each other, was wrong, and that a cycle of hatred won't end unless they both team up. And yeah, he literally kills himself, so respect to him. I'm gonna put him at like C tier, just because I think he's like interesting in that regard. He actually might be high C tier, since he's probably more interesting than Hitch. But yeah, don't hate me for that, I'm just saying he seems more interesting. I want to say like D tier, but like high D tier. He's just as relevant as these guys, if I'm being honest. Maybe he's like here. Who else do we have left? We have Yolina. Yolina's kind of interesting. She's actually one of my favorite characters. She's literally like a 7-foot like blonde girl. That's insane, like what the fuck? She's interesting because like she kind of shares the same theme as like some of these S tier characters like Gabby, John. It's to do with devotion, right? Like she's saved by Zeke and she feels that she's devoted to him for this reason. Now this is actually a major theme in Attack on Titan. There's so many characters who are saved by other characters and feel devoted to them, and she's just a great parallel to looks of other characters. Her height is kind of interesting, I don't know, like by me including all of this stuff as well. So I'm probably gonna put her like C tier, maybe like mid C tier, like here. I think she's probably more interesting than Hitch. Now this dude, Chubster, like where does he go? I do vaguely remember him, but like I don't even remember his name. He gets introduced in like the Uprising arc or something. Because I don't know exactly who he is, I'm gonna put him in like unknown. We have Falco. Falco is pretty much like Gabby, and their relationship is actually like a parallel to a lot of other characters who like save each other, right? This relationship could be a parallel of another relationship, the Eren Historia relationship, potentially, which I do think is very likely. It's like a parallel of that because he doesn't want like Gabby to get hurt and turn into like a Titan shifter, and he does admit that he loves her. So yeah, they're pretty interchangeable. I do think personally Falco's more interesting. It seems like he's more relevant to the plot, and it has been stated by Isayama that he's based off Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad, who's actually quite a significant character. And funnily enough, Jesse Pinkman is one of my all-time favorite characters, and I do think that like there's something planned for Falco in the final chapter. So I'll put him at like A tier, but higher than Gabby. There's a lot of themes that like he brings up in particular that Gabby doesn't, and I like the fact that like he's actually able to understand the other side. Falco this whole time has been a character who's been able to see from a perspective of two different sides from even the very beginning. So he's always been quite conflicted with his philosophy, which makes him interesting in my eyes. Now we're on the topic of these kids. The next character I'm going to talk about is Kaia. Now obviously Kaia is heavily related to these two characters since she was friends with them, but then she finds out that her sister got murdered by Gabby, so tries to kill Gabby, but later on Gabby saves her, and they kind of learn this lesson that it doesn't matter what side they're on because essentially they're all human. Killing each other isn't going to solve anything, and Kaia's development is really interesting. I think she's more of like a C tier character because I don't think she has as much relevance as these two characters. These two characters, Gabby and Falco, can be paralleled with like other characters. I don't think Kaia can, though she is interesting because she has a lot of development. I think she would be like a C tier character, probably around here. And I'm gonna put a few other characters in D tier since they're pretty irrelevant. Like the MPs, literally any of the MPs, they're pretty irrelevant, and they, you know, they roast Historia and shit, right? So, you know, they kind of annoyed me a little bit. And they're obviously clearly wrong. The whole point of the MPs is to kind of be that force that thinks they're right, but they're all actually just stupid old white men. But Niall is different. Niall is like, he's the only one who's kind of standing up for her, but he's still pretty irrelevant regardless. So I think it's just like a D tier character, if I'm being completely honest. This guy's pretty evil. I'm pretty sure this is a guy who fed like Grisha's sister to the dogs, which is like super fucked up, like I said earlier. Obviously for the same reasons as like Grisha's sister, he'd be relevant, but I don't think he would be as relevant. But if he didn't feed her to the dogs, then everything would have been different, so he's quite relevant to the plot. He might be another like low D tier character, maybe like here or here, I suppose. Sophia, she's one of the Malian warriors. Eren like brutally kills her with rocks. Yeah, that's kind of sad. And she was a kid, so that's definitely fucked up as well. I think she goes like here, but like the thing is she kind of influences like Gabby's like so yeah, she's probably just another D tier character, like a support character who, so she's probably like here. We could talk about this dude, literally the only black dude in like Attack on Titan. I'm gonna call him Onk. I can't say his full name, I know that's what it starts with, but you know what, he's actually kind of interesting. He risks his life to actually help the Eldians. He flies a flying boat and risks his life, but he also brings up this really important idea that the children are the future, which is really prominent in Attack on Titan. Children are the future essentially, right? And he's the one who kind of like cements it. He's the one who states it. So I would actually put him like at D tier, but like he's probably like here, if I'm being completely honest. He's probably more important than Marco, I would say, since technically he's still alive and relevant. We have Louise, or is it Lewis? I can never pronounce her name. But she's written quite well because like she's actually got build up. Literally in season 1, she was saved by Mikasa, and that's what inspired her to actually join the Survey Corps, to devote her heart. And she's actually meant to be a parallel of Mikasa. The same way she was saved by Mikasa and became obsessed with the person who saved her, that's the same thing Mikasa kind of did, and the same thing a lot of characters in the show do once being saved by somebody else. I think she's in the same ballpark as somebody like Yolina, if I'm being completely honest. Now let's move on to the protagonist, Eren Yeager. Yeah, he's trash. He sucks. Well, obviously he doesn't. He's actually beat. Now he's S tier. Come on, man. Like, how are you asking if he's like not S tier? He's literally the most complex character in the show. Well, he would be as a protagonist. He has the most screen time. And pretty much all of the themes in Attack on Titan relate to him. He's completely conflicted with his ideology, and he has so many memories in his mind, he doesn't even know who he is anymore almost. Now, I'm gonna do a video on him eventually, right? Talking about his like character generally as a whole. So there's no point me giving away a lot now, though I think you get the basic gist of what kind of character he is. He's somebody who doesn't like to give up. He has a momentum, a drive to carry on going forward, to always move forward. He's not willing to sacrifice his queen or country. He wants to save his friends, and he's prepared to sacrifice the world for it. Now, a lot of people kind of accuse me of like being a Jaegerist, but I'm not. Literally, I'm the complete opposite of him in real life. I completely disagree with what he's doing, but that doesn't make him a non-interesting character, because Eren really has embodied this idea of nationalism, and I think the author's trying to tell us the pros and cons of it. And now that the final chapter is upcoming, I'm sure we're gonna get his point of view. He's already cemented as probably the best character in the show, but the final chapter should complete him. Oh yeah, this dude was kind of interesting for a bit. Like apparently he went into battle super confident, but he died like a loser according to Flock, so I'm just gonna put him like here. Next is Nicolo. You know, he also embodies this idea of if you like get saved by somebody, you kind of become devoted to them. He saw Eldians as these like evil devils, but his mind changed, he developed. But yeah, other than that, he's pretty generic. I would put him probably like around here, I think. Hannes is important. He literally kind of like influences a lot of like Eren's kind of philosophy later on, I think. Because, you know, Eren used to actually like believe he was at the center of things, and that like Eren could make anything happen. But when he saw like Hannes die, like he realized how like useless he was and how much power he lacks. And then we saw like Eren cry when like Hannes died, and it was one of the most emotional scenes we've ever seen. So Hannes was actually quite important to Eren's character, I think, and he made him realize a lot of things about himself. Though other than that, I don't think he's that interesting of a character. So he might be one of those like really good support characters. He's probably more important than Willy Tiber. I'm not too sure. I'm gonna put him like slightly before him. Poco. I actually like Poco. I think he's quite relatable to me, because like it seems Poco is quite like competitive with the people around him, and that he really loved his brother, and when he died that really like took a toll on him. And he has one of the best scenes ever. It's that scene where like, you know, he sacrifices himself to save Reiner to complete the cycle. It was his brother who actually sacrificed himself to save Reiner, and then once again Poco does the same thing and sacrifices himself to save Reiner, and he proves to him that he was a better man. And as Poco sacrificed himself, he tells Reiner that he was the better man and that he deserved to be the Armored Titan. I'm gonna put him at B tier because I think like he has a very interesting personality, something that's really unique. Next, good old Connor. So Connie, he's actually a really cool character as well, and we really see his emotion in the final season. When Sasha dies, you can see that takes a toll on him. He's angry. He doesn't understand why Eren was laughing when Sasha died. And we see Connie turn from this really like light-hearted, funny character into this really dark character, which is really upsetting. But what I think is interesting is later on, when he's willing to actually kill this dude here, Falco, right? Because like his mum got turned to a Titan, and you know, if you feed a Titan shifter to a Titan, they return to their normal human form and become that Titan shifter. So he was gonna like sacrifice this kid, and he was so close to doing it. And that's when Armin stepped in and told him that like, by killing kids, is that gonna make him any better than them? Is that gonna make them any better than the enemy? And this is when Connie breaks down, and we see a lot of emotion from him. So I do love Connie. I think his character is really interesting, very emotional, very impactful to the story, and yes, he is one of the cringe Avengers, which automatically puts him at like B tier. And I suppose the same goes to Sasha. Like, she's quite a lovable character, she's funny, she eats food, haha. But like character-wise, she hasn't got like a lot going for her. But she did actually save Kaia. And there was actually quite an interesting like arc between them. You know, the way she saved her and then she became devoted to her. Mid-C, I think she might be... In fact, I think Rod Reese is quite important. I'm gonna quickly move him like higher than them. And then obviously we might as well just talk about Zeke. I think Zeke is fantastic. He's one of the best characters in the show for sure. He's willing to sacrifice everything. Everything that makes him him. Just to please the world. He wants to believe Eren is the same as him. He's just a character who's trying to project, and he wants other characters to understand him. He genuinely cares for his younger brother and his people, but he's willing to sacrifice them for the world, for the greater good almost. He's almost like a hero, and his character becomes even more interesting when he gives up against Eren. He realizes that Eren betrayed him. He takes this nihilistic approach saying that like, you know, we should just allow Eren to win. Because the meaning of life is to reproduce, right? But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But this nihilistic approach is actually destroyed by another character. And that character is Armin. Now, I don't think Armin is as interesting as Zeke, but the character arcs kind of do intertwine a little bit. Now, Armin is a reason why Falco is still alive. He's the one who gives motivation to Zeke and so many other characters, and he was meant to die a long time ago. But Eren decided that he would be the one who would save the world. So I think Armin is a super interesting character, and there's a lot more that he could potentially do in the final chapter. But yeah, he's definitely one of the best characters in the show. I'll probably put him a high A tier. I don't think he's as interesting as Zeke, like I said. Next character, Berto. There's so many different pronunciations, but like, he's a very appealing character because he's so emotional. Like, he knows what he's doing is wrong. He didn't want to be on the enemy side or anything, right? Like, when everybody found out he was a traitor, he was genuinely upset. Like, imagine you're friends with people for years, but this whole time you've actually just been like a double agent or something, right? That's gotta be so mentally crippling. And you can actually tell, because anytime he gets into a conversation, like, begins to like break down mentally, that war can have a mental toll on you. So I'm gonna put him at like C tier. Annie, I think Annie's really cool, to be fair. She got cool power. Well, her power isn't actually that cool, if you think about it. Like, what does a female titan even grant you? Even in the first season, it seems like she's kind of like, mentally breaking down, similar to like Bertolt. Like, you know when she has that scene where she laughs? Like, that's probably due to her like literally going insane. Because at this point, she probably doesn't even know what side she's on. So I'm probably gonna put her like here. Now, Piek is a cool character. Obviously, she's hot, like everybody fucking says it and stuff. But lads, we're here to fucking rate her character, like, come on. Character-wise, I know that she does have her ambitions. She wants her family in the internment zone to be free, but she doesn't actually sacrifice her friends, so she doesn't actually, like, snake them out or snitch. So she's pretty loyal, I think. But, like, writing-wise, I don't know if she's developed a lot, like, so I can't say. She's probably like high D tier, maybe, like here. Magath is pretty much Pixis or Shadis. Levi, now obviously this is gonna be massively controversial because like you either think like he's here or you think he's like here. I assume that most people like Levi. He's definitely a really popular character because, you know, he's cool. He's kind of short. Well, I don't know if being short is like a good thing, but like when it comes to Levi, it's definitely like a unique selling point. But what did I just say? I don't think his character's that great, if I'm being honest. Like, I don't find him that appealing or interesting. At this moment, the only thing carrying him is that he's just that cool. For example, if I removed Levi, would it be all that different? It wouldn't affect the story, but yeah, people just think he's cool. So I'm just gonna leave him like low C tier. Only because he's a Chad. Historia's mum, she is crap. But she is actually quite relevant because like she like hated Historia, didn't want her to be born, and that's quite an interesting theme because you know how Eren's always like, because I was born into this world, and he thinks that like being born makes you special, and he carries on his like mother's philosophy. Like, she's literally the complete opposite of this. Like, she didn't want her child to be born. So I'm gonna put her like just for being kind of relevant, probably like where these kind of characters are, like her. Frida, I don't know what to say. Like, Frida is pretty much Zeke, isn't she? But like on like Historia's side though. Like, do you get what I mean? If they're like parallels, like she's literally the same as Zeke. They literally have the same philosophy. Like, I'm not even taking the piss. Like, they both think that like they need to be passive and let their own people just be wiped out. Literally the same thing. Remember in that flashback, she was giving her like passive speech. Zeke was like, yeah, I agree with her, and all of that. Like, so they're pretty much the same character. But I don't think she's like as appealing as Zeke, because Zeke has like other like things going for him. So she's probably like I would say C tier, but like I don't know where to put her in C tier. Maybe like she's definitely more interesting than her dad, like for sure. I think she goes here. So who's left? We have modern day Yume. We know that she's clinical to the character of Historia, right? She taught her to live for her own sake, and to be true to yourself and not have fake facades, which is actually a theme in Attack on Titan, an interesting one, at the very least. To be selfish, but at the same time she's really selfless, though she does actually dislike that about herself. So she might be a really good supporting character. I would probably place her in the C tier, around here. We have Mikasa. Now Mikasa, I think she's written really well. A lot of people tend to assume she's not written that well, and she's just like a Chad type character, just some really overpowered female. However, she does have a lot of character development. Her whole role was kind of based around protecting Eren, and kind of almost being a slave to Eren. But from what we learned from the new chapters, she'd become independent, just like Isayama had intended. So it seems like she's disconnected from him. And now she is starting to seem a little bit more interesting. She's also a good example of a character who was saved by another character, and has become devoted to them. So continuing this theme, this would make her quite an interesting character. I would place her in probably high A tier. I'm not sure who's better between Armin and her. If you think Armin is slightly more interesting or better written, you could put Armin here. If you think Mikasa is slightly more interesting, you could put Mikasa there. I think it's somewhat subjective. We have Grisha. Now Grisha is obviously an important character, right? It all started because of him, since it was essentially his story, right? He wanted revenge for his sister getting eaten by dogs. He became an Eldian restorationist just to get revenge, a goal he would later give up. But what's interesting about him is, Eren seems to be a parallel to him. Despite Eren claiming that he's not the same as him, he seems to be heavily influenced by his actions, and they both seem to have a very nationalist ideology. Grisha less so in his later years. But I would probably place Grisha in A tier, but probably like there. Who's left? Well, we have Reiner, and if I'm gonna be completely honest, Reiner is one of my favourite characters, and he's actually one of Isayama's favourite characters. In fact, I think he is Isayama's favourite character. He's so interesting because he's essentially like Eren. They're like two sides of the same coin. I can't remember where I heard that, but from what I know, and how I've interpreted the story, him and Eren are like parallels, but at the same time they're opposites. Where Eren has this unbreakable conviction to move forward, Reiner is suicidal. He doesn't know if he can continue. He's a broken man. So they're two examples of men who are broken, but have taken different paths. Reiner wants Eren to give up, whereas Eren cannot. He's still bound to this world for some reason. Funnily enough, despite Reiner being suicidal, he always manages to get himself involved in like the biggest, most important fights. Ironically, like always surviving. And he seems to be Eren's rival for the most part. I would put him S tier, because like there's a lot of depth behind him. And anyone in S tier, I will eventually make a video on them, because they're that interesting, generally speaking. So yeah, he's probably S tier. He might be high A tier, but I think he's done enough to grant him low S tier. Kenny. Now, Kenny is another Chad Ackerman character. He's like insanely overpowered. But in my opinion, I think he's actually more interesting than Levi. I know that's probably going to annoy a few people, but I genuinely think he's more of an interesting character. I think his relationship with Yuri is very interesting. We're not sure what the nature of that was, but he seems to be connected to him somehow. And a lot of people blame this on the Ackerman genes. But this whole Ackerman genes thing has been a major talking point within the world of Attack on Titan. Is it even real? A lot of people think it's real, but a lot of people assume it isn't real. And then what is arisen by this idea of like having these genes that allow you to feel bounded to somebody creates this sense of like predeterminism. So it's like, do you think that Kenny is bound to Yuri as if it was determined? Or do you think he had the free will to choose? We'll never really know, and I think that's one of those questions that Isayama will just leave up in the air. So as my favourite Ackerman, I would probably put him in B tier, maybe like high B tier. I genuinely think he's just as interesting as these cringe Avengers. Next we have Carla. Now Carla was always going to be an important character, especially to Eren, right? Because Eren actually inherits a lot of her philosophy, right? That being born into this world makes you special, makes you free. And a lot of people in this story disagree with that because of this concept of predeterminism. But Carla was the one who sparked all of this. She's the one who told Shadis that her son deserved to be free. And pretty much this whole story began when Eren's mother died, when she was killed by a Titan, Dina Fritz. And this sparked a rage in Eren. A rage that formed his character almost. So I'm probably going to put her like at a high D tier. Probably more important than Willy Tiber, I would say. Flock. Now, everybody hates Flock for some reason. People think Flock isn't interesting, he looks weird. Nobody really understands the point of him. They think he's like Eren's bitch or something. The Flock is actually one of my favourite characters. I think he's heavily underestimated how good his character actually is. Because like Flock, from a very beginning, what kind of character is he? He was somebody who was introduced in the Uprising arc. And he asked John rhetorically if he's reliable. Even from the very beginning of Flock's introduction. He's always questioned whether he's relevant, and always questioned his role in the world. He never really understood where he belonged. He was a troubled child, you could say. And yes, he would end up being one of the most relevant characters in the story, being pretty much Eren's right-hand man for the most part. And he genuinely wanted to believe what Eren was doing was right. He would follow Eren to the very end, into the depths of hell, I would say. You know in Eren's memories when he has shards, you actually see like this shard with all of his friends, and he does actually see Flock in there. Meaning he did actually care about Flock, because I know a lot of people try to claim that he didn't care about Flock, but personally I think he did. I think he's at least a B tier character. He's probably just as interesting as John, if not more interesting. And I think his dynamic with John is quite interesting, because they are actually friends. Now we can talk about Historia. I think she's definitely written really well. I probably think she's the best written female in the entire show, if I'm being completely honest, right? So she's really like anti-god, anti-predeterminism. She makes Eren realize that there's more than just physical strength. You don't need to be strong, like physically, to just be strong or considered strong. And she makes Eren realize his own weakness. She saved Eren from like his own nihilism in the Uprising arc. You know, Eren literally wants to die, but makes Eren realize that he doesn't necessarily need to fight for humanity. He can fight for himself. He can be selfish. She herself overcomes her fake facade thanks to Yume, and she seems to be parallels with Eren. You can say like they won't end up together, it doesn't really matter, but you cannot deny the fact that they are detrimental to each other's character. She's a person who influences Eren's like plan later on, right? The whole destroy humanity kind of thing. And they're good parallels regardless, because the whole point of Historia was that like she shouldn't have been born. Nobody wanted her to be born. Her parents, her grandparents, but then this kind of fits really well with Eren's kind of philosophy, the whole idea that just being born alone makes you special. So she's definitely S tier. Like she's probably like here, but if I'm being honest, she's probably a lot higher. I think the only thing that kind of like places her at like bottom of S tier is like screen time. She really doesn't have that much screen time. But if anything, right, if you have like a lack of screen time and you're that interesting of a character and you're that detrimental to the main character, like philosophy-wise and development-wise, surely that's a feat. Surely like that's super impressive. Like how can you do that with like a minimal amount of like chapters? But obviously that's subjective, so I'm just gonna place it here. Now, fucking Erwin, my favorite character in Attack on Titan. This guy is serious, calculated, complex. He's a great motivational speaker. At the same time, he's grim and realistic, so he has this duality. He was accused by Zachary of caring more about himself than actually caring about humanity. He stated to Levi that he seeks knowledge, and he fights for humanity to expand his mind. He wants to know what's beyond the walls. He's at this parallel to Armin, and it was Levi who realized this parallel, and that's why he sacrificed his friend Erwin for Armin, because essentially they were the same person, but Armin was younger. Erwin actually has this surprisingly competitive nature. He would go into battle knowing he would die, but would still fight. He's actually really clinical to the plot too. You know how I bring up predeterminism? He's at this gold standard for a character who was born special into this world. According to Shadis, he uses him as an example of a person who was born special into this world, one that can change everything. As commander, he inspired so many people, including Flock. He literally has abs of steel, lost his arm for a greater cause, and left Levi with the ultimate choice. But in the end, when he talked to Levi in his flashback, he said he had remorse for all the people he had sacrificed. It was like mental destruction. He couldn't take the amount of people that he had sacrificed. He tried to cover this up as much as possible, but it was literally destroying him. And that's when we're shown one of the greatest panels within the entire manga, I think. And that panel is when he stands on top of the dead bodies of all of his dead comrades. It's absolutely breathtaking, the panel. I wish I could show it. He's either the best or second best character. He's more interesting than Zeke for sure. The final character I'll be talking about is Ymir, the OG Ymir. So where does Ymir belong? Well, she sets up the lore for the series, literally. So she's massively detrimental to the story and plot. Her appearance is quite sinister, I think, since for the most part, she's shown as a child. Though she appears in that minimal chapters, I think there's a lot of development for her. Well, there's a lot going on with her character, I think. Apparently, according to Zeke, she's still bound to this world for some unknown reason. And only Eren can understand why. She herself was a slave her entire life. She seeks freedom, hence she did actually set the pigs free to represent this. Eren also seeks freedom for her. We're not exactly sure why. She seems to be a parallel to Historia, appearance-wise, lore-wise, story-wise, personality-wise almost. And also a parallel to Eren with this desire of freedom. And her character arc isn't actually complete yet. But I will probably put her in A tier, if I'm being honest. She seems like infinitely more interesting than some of these like B tier characters, no offense. So maybe like here, I think Levi is probably a lot more interesting now I think about it. Since he had to make that distinction between Armin and Erwin. So I'll probably put him like here, and she's probably like here. I think that's it. I've completed it. Now, if you disagree with me with any of the rankings, that's fine. It's obviously somewhat subjective, so there's always going to be disagreements, obviously. So if you disagree with me, you can either talk to me in my Discord, which I will link down below in the description, or you can comment down below, that's fine. But I might not be able to respond to all the comments, since I do tend to get quite a few. But yeah, this was meant to be a fun video, so don't take it too seriously. But yeah, like you see all the people in S tier, I could actually do like videos on all of them, right? Because I think they're that interesting, like analyzing their character. And maybe some of the A tiers as well, since they're pretty interesting. Don't forget to sub and like the video, and there'll be a playlist at the end of this video if you want to see any other Attack on Titan videos. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.